Greetings, family. Another day of life, another day of breath. Grateful to be here, grateful to be healthy, spiritually, mentally, physically. As we talked about, their manifestations. So get right with the spiritual, the rest will fall into place. So just grateful. Did my reading for the day, got it in early. Always a good day when that happens. Read through First Chronicles, the 25th chapter. And it's a continuation. David's talking about the musicians and how each head of the household was casted lots for the different duties. I think that's a really cool thing about casting lots for God's will. It's similar to us picking straws and whatnot, but it's to determine, who God puts into certain situations, certain duties, the delegation of duties. So I think that's a cool practice that we still tend to use. I think sometimes we get mixed up and do it for selfish reasons. That's why gambling is such a bad thing. We leave it up to our own desires, but I think casting lots is a biblical thing, but the intention is for God's will, right? So that's the difference in that. The New Testament reading, Hebrews 11, and it was just full of great encouragement and also set a good example of what to do as modern day Christians, right? The first two verses of the chapters, that's what I wrote down today. It's just like, it just nailed it. It gave you more examples of why this is the case as the chapter goes on. But Hebrews 11, 1 through 2 states, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." This is what the ancients were commended for, right? This confidence is what we hope for. We ask God for certain things and we have faith that it's going to happen, right? But also, when things aren't going our way, we have no idea what's going on, trusting that God's got it, right? That's faith. And that's what all of the all of the Old Testament characters or people, I shouldn't call them characters because they're real individuals, but that's what they had in common. That's what God commended them for, right? From Abel having faith in his sacrifice versus Cain, right? God commended Abel's sacrifice because he has faith in God. He gave him the first fruits of his sacrifice rather than just the scraps. You know what I mean? It's like, because he has faith that God will either restore him of those things, or he just has faith that God will use him in the right way. And so Paul gives countless examples of this. You go on to Moses, right? Moses has faith in God, and he doesn't identify with his Egyptian family, right? Even though he could live in the pleasures of sin, but he has faith that God will provide what he needs when he's with his actual blood family, right? But they're struggling. Their Hebrews were enslaved by the Egyptians, so you can just imagine the life that they're living. It's a life of struggle. He's choosing that over royalty, being treated as like a god on earth. So that takes an immense amount of faith. And so many examples of that in the Bible. And so that's just what it is, man. And in my own life, it was an exercise of faith to basically step away from the world, right? Specifically, my battles with addiction, pornography, right? Love of money, all of these things, right? Because for me, those were just coping mechanisms for ailments that I had. It was a spiritual ailment, right? But manifested in emotional distress, physical distress. A lot of times it was like my own coping mechanism, smoking weed from all the trauma that I had, quote unquote. Basically just making it worse, honestly. I basically didn't deal with my issues. I just put them on until they bulked up. So it's like, this was a major coping mechanism for me. So while I say it's an exercise of faith for me to jump away from that, that was all I knew of ways for me to deal with my problems, right? It was an escapism mentality. I'm going through something here. I can use this to not make me feel so, right? Fill in the blanks. I'm sure many of us can relate, right? People in my life told me that if I stopped doing that, I would live a healthy lifestyle. It took a faith for me to believe that. While I didn't really equate it with God, but that's ultimately what it is. It was a faith aspect. I jumped out of that world and into the world of the kingdom, right, of God. And I was able to get all of the soothing relief and the peace and serenity that comes with living in the kingdom, which I would never have gotten from any of the things that I got. And so God, I feel like, is rewarding my faith in that way too, right? And so it's like, we can apply this in our lives, right? This is the continuation. Even the first generation Christians, right? Dealing with persecution. That takes an immense amount of faith. And so that's what is a common thread between all of these people. And that's God's love language, right? Faith and obedience, right? It's cool. So I wrote today, "Heavenly Father, forgive me, I get in my own way. Popping all these pills, the sickness won't go away. Please believe me, I want faith, but I need the patience. I told you I won't wait. It's a long line at the doctor. It's a long time till I'm proper, but you made a promise, and I trust the process. Always on time when you right with the Father. Ain't that right? All right, y'all have a blessed day. Peace and blessings.